Well, good morning to you both. To you all, this is a second tall speech in English, and I apologize to you on both counts. I'm very grateful to be invited to address this conference, and I must give thanks to Luis Miguel and his staff for the invitation and for their very great hospitality while I've been here in Locher. And I bring you greetings from the European Association of Distance Teaching Universities, which is very proud that UTPL is an associate member. Now, what I'm going to do in my talk this morning is take the philosophy and the practices that Tom's just been talking about and explore how they might be worked through the work of an actual university with its own body of students, with its own budget, with its own mission. And I'm going to do three things in this lecture. I'm going to introduce you briefly to the Open University of the United Kingdom. I'm going to discuss the ways in which it is engaging with open education resources. And then I'm going to look at the end at some of the challenges we face. For the Open University, open education resources are not a complete and finite project. Rather, we regard them as a form of action research, which leaves us with a whole set of questions which we're still working on and which I'd very much welcome your advice on. So we'll start with the Open University. It is the UK's biggest university now. It's been running for 40 years. We have 150,000 undergraduates inside the UK, 30,000 postgraduates. About 10,000 of our students have disabilities. About a third of them have lacked the entry qualifications that would get them into a conventional university. And about three-quarters of our students, 70%, are in work. We are the only open university in the UK with no entrance qualifications, yet in the annual National Student Survey, where the Open University has been top in 4 successive years, our education is better than Oxford and Cambridge in the UK. When we were founded in 1969, we were at the forefront of what was then the leading edge of technology for communication, which was terrestrial broadcasting. We were and have remained the only British university to be allowed by the BBC to broadcast our material alongside their usual programs. And for many years, late at night, you could see the Open University lectures after the other programs had finished, and they were seen by our students and by insomniacs who stayed up just to watch them anyway. At our foundation, and to this day, we regard the Open University as being open in 4 ways. We are open to people, to places, to methods, and to ideas. But the question that is posed by the open education resource movement, by the developments that Tom was talking about, is how we should now regard the notion of being open. Open in 2009 can mean open source, can mean open economics, can mean open communities, can mean open standards. And for us at the Open University, the challenge is to see how these new opens can be lined up with the old opens of the Open University so we can maintain our position in the UK and internationally as being at the forefront of the use of technology in higher education. And for us, open education resources comes in a number of different forms, and I'm going to go through them now one by one to show you what we're doing. Look at the BBC, OpenLearn, YouTube, Facebook, iTunes U, won't particularly illuminate, Second Life, and something called Social Learn. Now, at the BBC, we no longer put our lectures out on the television. We use DVDs and the web for that. Instead, we spend about £7 million a year, say $10 million, commissioning programs on the BBC to go out in prime time. On Shakespeare, there's a very successful series called The Coast, which takes viewers around the coast of the United Kingdom, telling stories about the history and culture of places it comes to. There's a program there, as you can see, the fourth one down, on Darwin, particularly appropriate in this country with the Galapagos Islands, which I've just visited. Those go out in primetime television. The more successful of them attract viewing figures of up to 5, 6, 7 million. And over the year, about 220 million viewers tune in to watch programs which have been sponsored by the Open University and which carry our logo and which our staff have worked on. And what we try to do is create a learning journey beyond these television programs. You see the program, and then you can go from there to a BBC website, from there to an Open University website, which will contain more free learning materials wrapping around that program. Then from the Open University website, there will be links into the formal courses that we teach, and we encourage viewers to start watching the programs in their homes and to end up signing up for an Open University course and degree. And we are just now talking to the BBC about whether we can use their iPlayer. Their iPlayer is a device which allows you to watch programs again after they've been broadcast on the internet. And we want to create a kind of iPlayer U so that you will look at these programs again on the internet and then be able to move straight into the Open University's materials. Then there is OpenLearn. Now, OpenLearn is really the classic open content initiative that we have. It was funded by a $9 million grant from the William Flora Hewlett Foundation. And what it does is take parts of the whole of our curriculum and present them free to users. These are not, as is the case at MIT, just discrete learning materials. They are complete programs of study in microcosm. All parts of our curriculum, all levels of our curriculum are represented there, and that they are quality assured, as is the rest of our program. And we've attached to this site a set of learning tools where you can develop knowledge maps, where you can form learning clubs between learners, where you can share activities, where you can report on your activities, where you can develop your own profiles. And from this site, you can link in to move to the more formal aspects of the university's work. The entire site is protected by a Creative Commons license. Users are free to download the material, remix it, and reload it back onto our site. Started 3 years ago and built the site up. Now there's about 5,500 learning hours of material on this site. And so far we've had 6 million discrete visitors entering this site. And every week, 10,000 units are printed off somewhere in the world. 10,000 downloads are made of our material by users somewhere in the world. We've translated some of it into Catalan, Portuguese, Spanish, and Chinese, but by no means enough, and that's one of our major priorities. Of those who've come into that site, 11,000 have gone on to become formal Open University students. This is just an article from the Times Online, a major British newspaper, which I don't expect you to read, but it's an account of how somebody found our free materials by accident on the web, read them, and then became so interested in the field of study that he then signed up for a formal university course. these are two maps showing how where the Open University's material has been downloaded around the world. And I'm not quite sure whether on the top left of South America that is actually Ecuador, but it's, as you can see, the material is now being used on a worldwide basis. Now that site is our own site. We built it, we designed it, we own it. But a second project for the university is to use existing platforms and insert our material into them. This saves us the expense of design and management and gives us access to the very large audiences which these sites have already built up. We have a dedicated channel on YouTube. OU View contains bite-sized extracts from a wide range of courses, videos of research, experiments at the OU, and OU student life in general. And to date, there have been over 1.6 million video views. And in a world first, the OU launched a free university course, iGoogle Gadget, that offers people a downloadable link to OpenLearn via their iGoogle homepage. We've got our own Facebook page and a presence in Second Life, a thing called Open Life, and a popular Twitter account with, at the moment, 2,631 followers, though I'm sure that number has grown since I got hold of that figure. And for us, YouTube can distribute our videos by embedding them in other websites, often blogs and social networks, and we can have a conversation with our viewers via comments, contents, and groups. This is a brief slide showing Facebook course profiles, which has over 6,000 users. Then iTunes U. Again, not a site we started, but we were invited into it in 2007 as one of the first universities of iTunes U Europe. And you can see on that slide, it's just a screen grab of a moment of iTunes U with what at the time were the three leading providers of material, the OU on the left-hand side there, Yale and Stanford. That's the company that we keep on iTunes U. And we've designed the site to be as attractive as possible. It's branded according to the OU's brand regulations, and it's very much a visual browsing experience for those who come into it. We've just passed off 10 million downloads from this site. Wednesday before last, in fact, was that date. We're averaging, as you can see, nearly 400,000 downloads a week. Now, for us, what's most interesting is that the great majority of these downloads are outside the United Kingdom. This is, for us, the means by which we reach a global market. Nonetheless, as they download this material, these podcasts, the viewers then often go on to look at the rest of our website. 1 in 10 do so. Since I've been speaking, there will have been, I don't know, several hundred downloads already of our materials. Just an example of where the market is. Given the nature of iTunes, the bulk are actually in the United States, with then the United Kingdom and the rest, and then the rest of the world forming the remainder of the market. And this is just a shot of one example of this, where we've got a microscope which you can access and play with through your iPhone. We have a site on Second Life. And finally, I want to talk about a new project for us, which is still in the design stage, which has the title of Social Learn, which is, if you want a single phrase, an attempt to build a kind of educational Facebook for learners. There is, as you all know, a huge worldwide enthusiasm for social networking. We want to see if we can turn that to the benefit of higher education. So instead of just people who are like you, we want to encourage people to interact with people who challenge and stretch you. From just interacting with friends, we want a site which introduces you to learning peers and to those who can mentor you. Instead of informal chat, we want learning conversations. Instead of isolated pieces of information, we want coherent learning journeys. Instead of simple numeric ratings, we want endorsements and critiques of material. Instead of tag clouds, we want meaningful connected ideas. And we want, instead of shopping recommendations, learning recommendations. And we've got a team of people at the OU at work designing this platform. And it's intended to give the users a secure identity, enable them to build up an e-portfolio of their learning, retain an activity history, to network with other learners, to have a kind of marketplace where people can sell into this site other services and other products, and will also provide us with analytics so we can understand how it's being used. So what I've done is very briefly introduced you to the range of activities which, under the broad heading of open education resources, a well-found and large university can engage with. But we remain a university. Our basic business is teaching undergraduates and postgraduates. Our economy, which is nearly £500 million sterling, rests on that work. And for us, these innovations are enormously exciting. They fit within our philosophy, but they leave us with a set of questions which we are still struggling to answer. And I've got 5 of them here. How we manage the bridge between informal and formal learning. What happens when you get a disaggregated university? The distinction between work within and without borders. The problem of the digital divide. And finally, the problem of the sustainable university. I'll just go through each of these in turn. What we are doing, and what we have already done through our various innovations, is create a worldwide informal learning community which numbers in tens of millions. There are now 2 open universities. There's a 250,000 or so students who are paid up, undergraduates and postgraduates. Then there are these millions of informal learners around the world. Now, both of these communities clearly have their value, but for us, the interesting question is how you bridge between them, how you get movement from informal learning into formal learning, and then for our formal learners, how they can carry on learning after they finish their courses back in the informal world. And that's not a given. Those bridges don't necessarily form themselves by accident. So we're trying to create those bridges. We're introducing global online programs, but cautiously. The world is full of universities who have lost their shirt trying to promote global programs. It's very hard, but we are doing that. We are using our Open Learn site and our BBC site as recruiting agencies, making sure that on those sites we've got portals, entry moments into our courses. We are using our open sites, our Open Learn sites, as play areas, practice areas, where those who might think about being a student in a particular discipline can try out what it means to be a student. And if they do come into the university, then they come in much better prepared. And we're also working on what is in the UK called UTPL, Accreditation of Prior Experiential Learning, which are structures where you can bring in the learning you've got, your informal learning you've got, and we'll wrap around some formal learning, give you some credit points, and then launch you into a full university course. Still working on all these areas, But we are trying to build those bridges so the informal learners do at some point become formal learners. Then there's a disaggregated university. Locher is so interesting because it's an experiment in what a university can be. Well, what open educational content does is challenge the Open University's notion of what a university can be. We are a very radical university in many ways, but in other ways we're very conventional. When you pay your fee, you buy a bundle of services. You buy support, the content, you buy the support from tutors, you buy assessment, and you buy accreditation and your degree. All comes as a single package. That's what universities do the world over. What open educational content asks is whether those services in the future will have to be as integrated, and whether in fact a university will break up and will deliver different services to different people. It can deliver, for instance, accreditation to students who have done a course or learned material somewhere else. It can validate learning that's been taking place outside the university. It can provide mentors for those who are learning other courses in other places. It can support cohorts of learners who are not actually inside the university taking courses. And it's possible that in the future the Open University will be a number of different universities offering a range of different services to a range of different learners, some of which are our students, some of which are not. Then there's the issue of the borderless community. Once you go into open educational sources, once you go on the web, you go around the world in an instant. Our iTunes can be downloaded anywhere on the globe. But it's much more difficult to teach formal courses around the world, because then you get mixed up in issues of quality assurance, of states, of the regulations of individual states, of their accreditation processes. And we are rather frustrated at the Open University at the moment because we have got huge numbers of people looking at our material, say in the United States, but teaching our programs in the United States is at the moment virtually impossible for a whole raft of regulatory issues. Now, whether we can get over that problem, I'm just not sure at the moment. At the moment, we've got a borderless community of informal learners and a very bordered community of formal learners. And it's one of the great questions, I think, as to whether we can bring those two communities together in a spatial, geographic sense. Then the digital divide. I don't think I need to dwell upon this point to anybody in this audience. But one of the criticisms of the open education resource movement is that it's a movement of the rich West. It's an investment by the rich West, which for all the claims of global reach, in reality is only used by the rich West and can only be used on a scale by the rich West just because of the limited access to the internet and to hardware that in less prosperous parts of the world that you find. And what I've just got here is a couple of slides showing the widening gulf in access to the internet and in the use of mobiles. This remains a problem for us. We are trying to get over it by being very imaginative in the ways in which we produce and communicate this material. A lot of it can be downloaded onto mobiles. A lot of it can be printed off if you want to disseminate it to people who themselves don't have access to the internet. But it does remain a problem. There is an asymmetry in this whole open education resource movement, which bothers all of us and which is going to take some good few years to overcome. In an ideal world, we at the Open University would not only be putting this material out, we would be getting it back from users at Locher and around the world at a scale, enriching our university as we try to enrich others. And I can't say yet it's happening at the level that we'd wish it to happen. My final point is about sustainability. It was also the final point on Tom's presentation. My university is an economy. We have to balance our books. We're a public university, we're a not-for-profit university, but we're also a not-for-loss university. All of this activity has a price attached to it. And if it's to survive the first flush of enthusiasm, we have to find a way of building sustainable business models. Now, for me, the best way of understanding this is in the form of this triangle. There are three potential sources of income. At the top, there's public funding through governments or charitable funding through foundations. The bottom left is when it's mainstreamed into your university business, when, as we do at the Open University, we see it as part of our marketing activity, as part of our branding activity, as part of our recruitment activity. We spend money on this anyway. We just transfer our budget from one pocket to another, and it has an application to our core business. And the bottom right is the customer, whether as an individual customer or as a corporate customer, who at a certain point will purchase some of these services. This is the so-called freemium model, where you put out a lot of free material, but then you sell specialized services within that universe. You sell tuition services, you sell high-level content, you sell assessment services. There are models of that kind, say Skype. In the commercial world, it's a question as to whether we can bring them into this universe. And for me, the answer for any university is going to lie not at one corner, one apex, but at some point in the middle. At the moment, the OU is on this left-hand line. It's got a lot of public funding from the government and from the Hewlett Foundation, but it's also treating it in part as mainstream university business. If we were to launch this social learn site, which would have a commercial aspect to it, which would sell services, which would charge people coming into this, bringing some services into the site, we might pitch up down this right-hand corner, where it's much more of a commercial activity. Now, I think the position of our innovations will move within this triangle in ways which we have yet to fully predict. But to make a point which everybody in this movement has been making for several years, unless we can answer this question, then we could be in a moment not of a continually rising line, but actually in some sort of bell curve where we go over the top and then decline as universities withdraw their commitments to this movement because they simply cannot afford it at a time of increasing threats to the public funding of universities worldwide. So solving this is an urgent problem for us all if we are to maintain our commitment to open education resources and really exploit its very great benefits. Thank you very much.